I became a Christian on July the 8th, 1974. I was 17 years old. Now, if you've been watching these videos, you may remember that I said I first felt God's nudge toward pastoral ministry when I was 7 years old. And from the time I was 7, I felt like for me to be a Christian would be to be a pastor. So that begs the question, why the 10-year gap? It may be that some of your stories are real similar to my story. So I'm going to share. But before I do, I want to introduce you to Panther Slough. It's a little strip of water that empties into the Illinois River here in west central Illinois. And when I'm on Panther Slough, it feels to me like I'm in some jungle tributary or something. Let me introduce you to Panther Slough, and come back and talk about that 10-year gap. Well, I never really quite have time to get through all that I want to get through on these midweek devotions. But if I have the time to do it, I want to say 3 things just very quickly kept me from becoming a Christian for probably 10 years. I'm not really sure when I was 7 years old that I knew what being a Christian was. I mean, I was raised in a church, went to church every Sunday, was taught Bible stories from the time that I was in preschool, and by the time I got to be a teenager, we were memorizing a lot of scripture in the church that I attended. I had a very strong sense of some things being right, some things being wrong, and if you had asked me, I probably would have said that I'm a Christian. But I would be a Christian kind of like I am a rural person, or a person from west central Illinois, or like I am a member of my family. That is, I am a part of a culture that is Christian, and I consider myself Christian. I'm not sure that encompasses all that it is to be a Christian. You can believe in the existence of God. You can believe in the stories of Jesus. You can attend church and still not have a commitment to your faith. There comes a time when our faith has to quit being our parents and our cultures and become ours. And that happened for me on July the 8th, 1974, when I was 17, not when I was 7. Number 2, my second reason that it took 10 years for me to become a Christian is I did not want to be a pastor. There wasn't anything about being a pastor that I liked, especially not the income of being a pastor. I was, from the time I was little, I was a pretty industrious young person. I was able to make money when I was still in grade school. I was able to buy a late model sports car when I was in high school. I had ideas of what I wanted to be, and I wanted to make money. And I wanted to do things that, weren't exactly the same as being a pastor. Well, actually, I didn't want anybody to control my life. I never was one for smoking and drinking and different habits and drugs and stuff, mainly not because I was a Christian, but because I just couldn't stand the idea of not having control of myself. I wanted to have control. Becoming a Christian begins by taking your hands off the steering wheel and letting God have control of your life. Not something I relished very much. I will say, now that years have gone past and I look back at that decision instead of forward at that decision, when you're looking forward to it, you don't know what the future holds. It's kind of scary. You think maybe you could do a better job than God. Now that I look back at it, I think there is no way I could have, in any fashion, come up with the life that matched me any more perfectly than what God did. There was nothing for me to worry about because God matched me to my career even when I wouldn't have, in a way that I just never even fathomed. Okay, number 3, if I've got time to share this. I must confess, as a teenager, I really didn't like Christians that much. I pretty much thought of Christians as being pretty legalistic, pretty harsh, a big list of things you should do, a big list of things you shouldn't do. And I thought the world would be a better place if they could just develop a chill pill and take the pill and chill out a little bit. And you'll still see today even that I carry a little bit of that radical side in me, thinking that maybe we ought to chill just a little bit and learn to love. And I didn't relish spending my life in the business with people that seemed to know all the things you could do and couldn't do, but didn't seem to know how to love. Okay, so what happened? A couple of things happened. One thing, God kind of showed me that my criticism of the church was ignoring that I was just like them. That I was born and raised inside of a culture that was pretty critical and pretty sharp, and that I was holding people to a standard that I didn't hold to myself. I kind of ignored it in me, thinking they ought to do it. And I see it all around me when we throw rocks at the church, when not realizing that they're just like us and that God's doing some growing. And that's one of the things. A second thing that happened in regard to that was, not long after I became a Christian, I began to wonder if this was going to stick. I had some attitudes that maybe weren't so sweet. I began to second guess myself. I began to think that I didn't have what it took to be a Christian. And I was at an old rusty camp meeting there in Nashville, and I went down to an altar. And during an altar call, which I don't usually do, and I knelt and I prayed. And basically my prayer was just, God, you called me to follow you. Give me the strength to do it. And it just felt, I don't know how to describe it, just felt like chills going up and down through me, almost like electricity. And I stood up and I turned around and I was passionately in love with every person I saw in that room. Faults, warts, and all. Don't think I could have been a pastor had that not happened. I still hammer on that subject a lot. I still think that we as churches are tempted to be harsher than we need to be. And if we learn to live, we would be a lot more attractive to the world. If we learn to live and learn to love. And that in the process of God showing me that I was very much the kind of person that I didn't like, I got into some church arguments that hurt some people, for which I have regretted pretty much all my life. But it opened my eyes to me. Maybe my story isn't like your story. Or maybe it is. Well, whatever, may God bless you this week and be with you and me both as we continue to grow in learning about Him.